Right. Welcome to Synced on Air. Today, we're diving into a topic that is becoming more and more urgent each year. It's how we design landscapes in a world where water is no longer abundant. And I'm sitting here in South Louisiana, where I think it's very relevant. We see a lot of rain every summer, all year long. We see flooding events, and we're running out of freshwater aquifers. So I'm really excited to talk about the future of landscape architecture is water smart with Paul Mann. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Angelique. Great to be here.
Well, I'm really excited about this because anybody who I've met before knows that I like to talk about water and how we're maybe not using it as smartly as we could, or we haven't used it as smartly as we could in the past. But, education sources like yourself and you're founder of Water Champions and also Renova Academy, two organizations at the forefront of water reuse and efficiency. Do you want to give us a little background on those two companies while
Sure,
you're,
be
yeah,
happy to. Yeah. Water Champions is a consultancy for designing and engineering water reuse and efficiency solutions. And I'll talk more about that as we get into it, but these are things that can reduce potable water use by 50 to 70% or more and really make our water go farther, which is what we're talking about in the face of climate change. Renova Academy was something we founded last year as an effort. We realized that the issue of water is where solar was 20 years ago, or at least the space of doing
interesting.
water reuse and efficiency. And we don't have 20 years to get our act together with water efficiency, with making it more sustainable. So we founded Renova Academy to provide online education and training for designers, those are architects, developers, builders, installers, people who would go out and sell these solutions, consult on these solutions, as well as government agencies, municipalities who are thinking about how do they make their water supply match demand and keep up with population growth and climate change. And then lastly, for homeowners, really to be educated that there are solutions
Mhm.
available that can reduce their bills, that can reduce the carbon impact, that can help them to be part of the solution rather than the problem of how do we have water available for the future, for future generations.
Fantastic. I think, but yeah, I'm looking forward to diving in more, and what all of the work that you're doing. But on this podcast, we're going to go into more about landscape architects and or landscape architecture and how we can embrace more of that methodology. What first drew you into the world of water reuse and efficiency?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was during COVID, and I'm here in Northern California in Marin County. And we were in the middle of not only drought, 3 years of drought, but we were also having the fires outside. So we were stuck inside and we were looking at our water bills and we were, where we were, our reservoirs were down to 35% capacity. And if they got to 20%, they were unusable. And I thought, this is crazy. How did we get here? This was clearly a mismanagement of resources. And it was also climate change really coming in hard. And we realized we had to do something about it. So we started putting water reuse and efficiency solutions on our property. We put in an outdoor shower for our hot tub. My wife wanted that. And then pretty soon we got the idea, let's put in rainwater harvesting. And we fed that shower with beautiful fresh rainwater. And then we gray watered that shower to our 3-level garden. So it came in below ground and it provided water to grow fruits and vegetables. Then we started putting in more gray water systems around our property. We have tenants on our property. So we did a laundry to landscape system, which captured all of our laundry water. And we got our kids' bathrooms who took like incredibly long showers and which took the pressure off me having to like yell at them. And instead we were getting all of this water. Our other tenants' bathrooms, we have 2 bathrooms that we were getting their water from. and it's feeding our whole landscape. So we have a fruit orchard. We're on a half an acre. It's feeding everything between the rainwater and the gray water. We got into water efficiency solutions to reduce the amount of water that we were irrigating with, smart leak detection, and the list went on. And we reduced our water by 63%. In some months, it was 70% reduction of potable water use. And that's where we realized, wow, we've got something. So we started really going out there, first in our neighborhood, and we got a huge uptick in business just from people, our neighbors who wanted this. And then we've recently been expanding into multifamily and commercial installations for campuses, commercial campuses and such. But with that, what's exciting is we've really been able to become distributors of some really cool, innovative technologies from other countries, really nothing here in the US, other
Okay.
countries who have gone through drought already or through flooding, and they've really developed these solutions out of necessity. So we're bringing these now here into the US to really make a difference.
And do you find more of your work is in the California area? Or are you working all over the US? Where is the bulk of your
Yeah.
work right now?
We started here in California, and certainly the West is really in need because it's primarily in drought. Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, the list goes on, unfortunately. But we're now seeing it extend to the eastern boards. The other issue is flooding. So on the East Coast, where I'm from, they're seeing, I mean, climate change is creating floods, droughts, fires, things that at such intensity that we never expected. And so, for example, that flooding is affecting water supplies. Or up in areas like Portland, Oregon, where it's the sixth highest water bill in the country. It's because they charge you for every CCF of water that you consume, they charge you 3 CCFs for stormwater runoff. So we help people reduce the amount of water that they're consuming, and that reduces that big bill on the back end. So we're really
The
finding
runoff. Yeah.
solutions can help across the country.
This is exciting. Getting back to just framing the issue, why do you think water is the defining issue for the future of landscape design?
Yeah, I mean, without water, it's pretty hard to have a landscape. And that is where our company was born out of. We had drought restrictions during the COVID period that restricted people from watering maybe once, twice a week, if even. And we saw landscapes drying up, which were very expensive, but also that creates a fire hazard because those are dry properties that are perfect fuel for fire, which is a problem in a lot of areas now. So water is at the source of everything. And the exciting part is pretty much everywhere there's enough water for what we need. It's just a matter of being able to capture and reuse it wisely so that you have it when you need it. And so
Well,
we see
I
in
said to you
landscape
before this
architecture,
call.
there's a
Oh, go ahead.
no,
Go ahead.
go ahead. It's fine.
Well,
Well, I
I
was,
guess we're doing it. Okay, you
you,
go first,
you got
Paul.
it. No, please. Yeah. It's your show.
Well, I guess before this call, I was saying how it frustrates me that, we're in South Louisiana and it rains so much, a lot of sun too. And I feel like what we've done over probably decades and decades of building landscapes or outdoor spaces that all the water is running into the street and going down the drains, and we still need irrigation for our plants, and it just seems pretty frustrating that we have this great resource that we're running down the roads.
Yeah, it seems counter to logic. And actually in Louisiana, this is a hard thing to say. It's sinking 5 times faster than the average of the entire globe. And the reason is because they are sucking so much water and oil out of the ground there, out of the aquifers and the oil reserves, that it's literally collapsing. And so logic would say, let's recharge those aquifers. And that's a lot of what permaculture is about, is let's slow spread and sink that water to recharge the groundwater. And it makes it nutrient rich for the soil. And of course, it prevents fires and it gives that stability to the plants, the landscape, everything that you're putting in.
Think, at least in Louisiana, I know this is not the case for where you are, but I feel like we don't value it because it rains so much, and people don't realize that we're wasteful with water because we think there's so much of it. There's water around us, there's swamps, we're always crossing bridges of water, like everything points to the fact that water is everywhere, but it's not in our water aquifers, in our freshwater aquifers. And I think that's the thing that's not so obvious because you can't just see down there, is that we are depleting it quicker than we're recharging it. And it's a big problem.
It's a big problem. The folks who are running the water treatment plants are like incredible at not letting us know exactly what is going on behind the scenes. But the reality is, you're right. We're letting all that water run down our shower drains and our sinks, and it's also running down our stormwater pipes, from the landscape. And that water has to be treated. That water has to be cleaned. That water has to be pumped back. And about 20 to 30% of all electricity is from doing that. And so it presents a huge carbon impact to the planet, to the local community. Water is very cheap. We don't think about it. We don't see it. We don't value it. But I'll tell you right now that at least in the US, at least 40 states are projected to face water shortages in the next 10 years. And that's just here in the US. But right now, nearly 4 billion people face water scarcity around the world. So we're living in a little bit of a fantasy about water, and half the world is in a water stress situation. So to your point, like, it's time that we wake up to the reality that climate change is going to have a whiplash effect on our water supply. If we miss a good snowpack, or if we get too much rain, it can grossly affect the availability of water. And so for landscape architects who are putting in beautiful landscapes, uh, I think it's important to think about how you sustain those after you leave. So it's not just about planting it and coming back and maintaining it, but it's also ensuring that it has all the nutrients and all the water and everything that it needs to flourish and thrive. And that's what we're really talking about. And that's where landscape architects sit upstream. So in other words, you're either contributing to the problem or you're part of the solution of making water go farther in the landscapes that you're installing. And so it's an incredible opportunity to think about water as you're thinking about the landscape
Yep. Great.
and building water
Great.
security, in other words.
Well, and are there misconceptions about how much water landscapes really need to thrive? You know,
Yeah, I
how
mean,
do
you
we
see,
go ahead?
yeah, you see landscapes out there where people are watering them on a set basis, meaning they have a landscape irrigation controller. They set it for summer, they set it for spring, and it has a different cycle, but it's kind of set it and it does the same thing for 2, 3 months. And so in a lot of cases, we're overwatering our landscape or underwatering the landscape because we're not looking at other things such as precipitation that's coming or wind that might cause spray irrigation to not hit the target that plants that it's supposed to hit, humidity and so on. So there are exciting new smart irrigation controllers. One that I love is like Rachio, and that's a great device that pulls data from over 350,000 weather satellites. It's accurate within 35 feet of where that device is. It has a
Okay.
2-week forward view on the weather, and it basically gives you the ability to either manually set a schedule, like historically people have done for irrigation controllers, or you can go all the way to autonomous, self-driving. And it literally minute by
Mm.
minute is making decisions based on this weather data. So, for example, if it's a windy day, it might actually pause your spray irrigation until that wind gets below a certain level so that it hits its target and
That's
doesn't
great.
spray out to the sidewalk. Yeah. It will look, if it knows that it's going to rain in 5 days or 2 weeks out, it's going to start to decrease the percentage of water that it's putting out to the landscape. These solutions, a solution like that, can reduce irrigation potable water use by up to 30%. And that's a huge number when we think about particularly some very large landscapes out
Yeah. Yeah, that is huge. Um, what other, talking about landscape architecture, the planning before installation and, a lot of the things that we had an article just recently that we published, a landscape in Oregon, in Portland, that used a lot of dry riverbeds. And again, it would, the goal of this was Todd Blossom, of their company. And I think all landscapes in Portland have to, soak in where the water falls, that's where they have to absorb it, which is a great philosophy. And so they built this landscape to do that, and they had some beautiful water features. Water features at, I should say that in a different way because it sounds like it's a, a fountain, but it was a dry
there.
riverbeds, and it was a way to capture the water and soak it into the ground. What other methods can we plan into our landscapes to help?
Sure, that's great. I like to say, first of all, look at where your water sources are when you first look at a property. So, for example, there are three waters I think about in addition to potable water. That should be your last default. But I start with things like gray water. Can we grab water from the showers, the bathroom sinks, from the laundry, and either bring it out to the landscape raw as unfiltered gray water? It has to come in below ground into mulch basins, which are like little reservoirs by each plant? Or do we recycle it into germ-free clear water, which can also be used for toilet flushing and laundry and things like that? And it plugs into existing irrigation. So there are solutions depending on how you want to treat that water and the gray water and then bring it out to the landscape. The other thing we look at is rainwater. So for every 1,000 square feet of rooftop that you capture per inch of rain, that delivers 600 gallons of rainwater. So that means just in 10
Wow,
inches, you've got
that's a lot.
6,000 gallons. That's a lot of water. I mean, most people are like 6,000 gallons will really take you through a season. And especially when you couple it with other things. So very easy. Most people have the rain, they just don't have the storage. So think about capturing rainwater. The last one, and this is like the most easiest that's available for everyone, is the stormwater, the water that runs across that property. So we love to look at permaculture techniques to slow, spread, and sink that water. And it can be everything from swales that wind that water through a landscape. I just did a great video on a permaculturist who is winding it through a garden, and it's sinking in and it's feeding that garden, and he's got wildflowers everywhere, and he doesn't water the landscape. It's insane. And this is in Northern California. But so we can do swales, we can
Wow.
do rain gardens where the water flows into a temporary
Mhm.
basin and then sinks into the landscape, and that's going to permeate the aquifer water table. We can do retention ponds. I think that's sort of what or maybe you were talking
Mhm.
about a detention pond, even where we have a fixed pond of water, or a retention pond, which temporarily holds it. We can do blue-green roofs, which are thinking about planting on rooftops with beautiful plants, and the water is temporarily held through the technology, and then that stormwater eventually runs out. So it's feeding, it's cleaning, and it's delaying stormwater so that we're not impacting or over providing water to the stormwater drains too quickly. So it
Yeah.
balances the amount of water going out, but slows it out.
And you have better insulation on your roof.
And it's great for the environment because the sun, instead of getting those black roofs, which causes more issues of climate, it actually absorbs carbon dioxide, and it's not it's not impacting our planet, but it's actually helping to make it better. So these are all these solutions. Of course, mulching and putting in drought tolerant plants that require less water
Mhm.
is always a great thing. A lot of areas, like in my area, we did a cash for grass program we have. I got $4.68 a square foot to take out my grass and put in
Okay.
a rain garden with drought tolerant plants and all the mulch and everything I needed, which paid for everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. How can water consultants like yourself work with, or how have you been working with landscape architects on projects? Because I think that's also important to understand how, if you've never designed these in, how to start.
Right. And that's a super important point. Most people are confused by, they're just, it's new and there are so many components and they need to focus on all of their jobs. They have multiple clients and deadlines. And so they want to do it, but sometimes it just feels too daunting. That's where we come in. Water champions are really the specialists. This is what we do. We do this all day long. And so we come in as a consultant to landscape architects or to architects, developers. We love to be way upstream when people are designing homes. But if it's just, at any stage of a landscape, we can come in, look at what you're doing, go from that concept to full implementation. And we sort of have a playbook, which thinks about a lot of things that you need to know. So we think about the assessment of the site, the design, the engineering of these water reuse and efficiency solutions. We also research local codes and are there permits required? We then get into what are the right solutions? And we love the test stuff. So we've curated all the solutions. We know what solution to apply to each specific situation. We then provide those estimates so that we can understand the costs as well as the implementation plan. And this is where Renova Academy comes in with the education and training that they can get. And we can even customize that if needed. And then we assist them in the actual on-site implementation. So we support them as they're going along. So really think of it as we're kind of that glue that brings it all together and helps them to go from concept to completion with confidence.
So one thing that comes to mind is, you're talking about possibly holding tanks or building, rainwater harvesting systems and tapping into the plumbing that, there's obviously an install cost, there's an upfront cost. And I think that probably, in certain states it's easier to justify than, but it brings me back to the what you said is very powerful. In 40 states, 40 out of 50 states are going to have a water shortage or a problem with water supply in the next 10 years. If it's still a hard sell and landscape architects want to do this, what do you have some financials or something that helps sell this to clients from a financial,
Yes,
because it is
yes,
an upfront cost,
that's right.
but it is urgent. 10 years
Yeah,
is a short
yeah,
time, really.
yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to give everyone some ease who's listening to this. If you're a landscape architect, you don't have to know all this stuff. Landscape architects are in there and have the trust and confidence of the clients and their ears. And so all they have to do is bring the project to us. We'll actually manage all of that part for them with them engaged. So that's the first part. The second is to your question. Yes, we have found that we really need to tell the story of what this means when they put in water reuse and efficiency. And part of that story or dialogue, yeah, of course, it's about water security and sustainability and those things that are wonderful, but it also comes down to dollars and cents. And so for every project, what we do is we calculate over a time frame, 10 years, 25 years, whatever we want to do there, the cost savings the water and cost savings, meaning the reduction in not only water, but the electricity bills for having these solutions, the reduction in the water, as well as the carbon reduction, the carbon impact. And we put those into real terms that
Okay.
people can understand. But we also look at the ROI period. So a lot of these solutions will have an ROI in a year. Some are 3 years, some are 7 years.
Really?
It just depends. Yeah. And, if you have less people in the household or you're servicing, your systems aren't doing as much, sometimes it can be longer. So it really depends. But we'll quantify all that and really help the homeowner to understand what it means and why they should do this and what are the financial benefits of doing this to make their home more
That is
valuable, water secure.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think having that ROI really, um, and yeah, because it'll change every situation. Everybody's property will be different, but having that ROI is really the strong selling point
Yeah.
with,
And the other good,
yeah, I was gonna say with the facility to have water, to save your water and have a supply for the future, I think is so
right.
powerful.
And I think two things I want to say to that is like people need to understand, or landscape architects need to help their clients understand that landscape they're putting in is an investment. And sometimes it's really big in terms of all those plants and the labor to put them in and getting the land prepared. So you want to protect that. It's like an insurance policy to make sure that there's always water for that landscape. The second thing I want to say is that the good news is, and you asked me what are the possible sources of water, and we talked about, rainwater, gray water, permaculture, or stormwater. But within that, there are also the ability to go from high cost solutions to very, very low cost. I mean, we can do a laundry and a landscape system it's in the hundreds of dollars. It's very cheap. So, it's
Wow.
easy to, really work with a client if we understand what they're trying to achieve. We look at how much water does this landscape need? And then we try to figure out, do you want to offset 20% of that water, 50, 70, or more? And then we can design the system to it. But anything, start with something, even if it's just a simple laundry to landscape solution, that can have a huge impact.
That's awesome. It's great to have the figures, of it can be in the hundreds of dollars of a solution and save so much. When we were preparing having you on the podcast, you said that we can design for a reduction of half of the water used on site. I mean, is that been, I guess you have measured this and that's the kind of return that you're able to provide on these projects.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
mean,
right?
you can do
That's
more.
yeah.
I'll give you an example. At a larger scale, one that I love is out here. Google started their Google Visitor Center. They launched it last year, and it captures 720,000 gallons of rainwater. They process all their stormwater, and they treat 85,000 gallons of gray water per day. They are now not only net neutral, they're net positive. They're producing 120% of the water they use. That means that they're giving away excess water now to the communities. And there's a heat factor when they're doing this. It generates heat as they're treating this water, and that's helping to heat homes in that general area. So it's I say 50 to 70% or more is like our baseline that we really try to get to for a home. And that's just arraying some of these solutions. I've done it easily on my property with just simple systems. And so it really, again, it just depends on what the homeowner or the building owner, maybe it's a multifamily home, who knows? It just depends what they're trying to achieve and the result they want to get out of it. And then we array the solutions and the cost to it, and we see where the ROI matches up best.
That is fantastic. Yeah. Not only generating or cleaning the water and providing clean water to the community, but also heat as well.
Yeah.
That's a great
And
case study.
I mean, here's a fun thing we do, on our property. We have enough water to, do everything we want to do that we now give it away, some of it to our neighbor. So she planted some new trees and and plants, and we're irrigating that as well. So can you imagine if we all actually got to a place of net positivity where we could share water? Just like we're sharing back solar back to the grid, what if we could produce excess water that goes back to the grid or back to our neighbors, and it helps the communities to thrive?
So do you have on your property, do you have tanks to hold this water? How are you storing it? Is it above ground, underground? I mean, just visually, what do you see?
Yeah, visually, I mean, we got lucky because we have a upward side of our home that no one ever goes to. No man's land.
Okay.
And that's where we have our solar bay and our batteries, all of our equipment for that. And we put some tanks up there, 3 1,000-gallon tanks up above, and we covered it with corrugated stainless steel. So what you can see
Okay.
visually, actually, we have like a modern farmhouse vibe going. So it gives it that look, and
Okay.
it really, it's a fresh, vibe.
It fits in.
Vibe.
Yeah.
My son would yell at me for saying vibe. And then down below, we we have another tank. We wanted to double our capacity, so we added another 2,600 gallons this year, and that's just sitting at the very base of our property. And we're watching the trees and plants just start to cover it. It's dark green. It's blending in. So we didn't have the ability to, because it was quote a retrofit, we didn't have the ability to come in with machinery and all this stuff. So we did that very simply.
Mhm.
But if you're coming in new, or if you have access, you can also do below ground tanks. And these are called cisterns. And all that you see is a hatch about this big, circular.
Okay.
That is the access hatch to the cistern, and you can cover that with a fake rock or plant around it or whatever you want. But that's a cool opportunity to store water below ground where no one will ever see. That works well with new constructions, with remodels, where they're coming in and really changing the landscape and bringing in big machinery. While you're in there, just dig a hole, drop that tank in, and we can connect that up to irrigation. But, above ground is still a very popular option. As I mentioned, you can cover it with things like corrugated steel, or you can plant around it. There are some really cool artists in the area. We're near the wine country, Sonoma, Napa. So people are like
Nice.
doing
Yeah.
these really cool artistry on them. But there are so many ways that you can or blend them into the landscape. You can build structures around them. That's a challenge for
Mhm.
landscape architects, is like, how can you create these beautiful structures, within the garden, within the landscape, where
And
they
be in
work, they
keeping with the
actually add
house
value.
and
Right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Well, and I think, yeah, having your own water source, especially in the drier states, is has to help you sleep better at night.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, it reduces the bills for sure, but the fact that we have water security, we know that I have clients who don't use those tanks at all when we're in the drought period. They run potable water for the first part of the summer, and they're waiting, because if there's a drought restriction, they don't want to get stuck with their pants down. They've got those tanks ready, and they're able to then go ahead and irrigate. So, and then of course there's
Which
knowing
makes
that if there was
sense.
a,
I was gonna say, it just makes sense with the unpredictability of the weather. It has been more unpredictable lately.
yeah, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. The last thing that's really cool about these types of systems, I have a client who put it in just for firefighting. And so I mentioned that Rachio product. It comes in on your smartphone. That's a smart irrigation controller. We set up a zone for him, a perimeter zone and a rooftop zone, so that if the fire comes, he can get in his car, get out of there, but he can on his phone access and start that irrigation system to spray out the perimeter and soak the rooftop. And that's a very easy thing to do with these solutions. So it can become
Yeah,
multi-use in terms of, obviously you have to have a good pump. We put a larger pump in for things like that, but it's all possible, and you can run that thing. And these rainwater tanks always have a municipal water backup supply. So even after you run
Okay.
down your rainwater, there's always municipal. So that could go until the pipes burst upstream from fires. It can
Yeah.
possibly prevent and save a home during a big fire.
Is amazing. And I love how integrated water is, to the whole house. Like you're talking about using the laundry water, the gray water in the landscape, and the tanks can save the house in a fire situation. It's very separate in a lot of cases. I don't know about the plumbing in the house. I only know about the outside. The landscaping's on the outside, but it is so important that our systems bridge those two and we make use of the water that we're throwing away, um, that can be used in the landscape, and vice versa, that the water that we're collecting could actually use to fight a fire on our house. So I love that connection. We're getting close to time. I just thought there's so much that we could talk about on this, but where do you see the future? Um, you're doing a lot for a lot of companies and campuses. What is the future for water smart landscapes? Where do you see this all going? And ideally, what does it look like in hopefully 5 years' time?
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of people are not motivated to do anything until a crisis hits, is my experience. So when we have a drought or when we lose our water supplies to flooding or extreme fires or whatever it may be, that's when people tend to take action. I think it's really important for landscape architects who are upstream of all design to become advocates and be part of water sustainability and that movement because they're trusted advisors to their clients. And so I think the future, as I see it, is we're going to have a problem, continued problems with water. Climate change is here. Water mismanagement is real. Population growth is happening. And all the ways that we're building and, screwing up the natural flow of water and the water cycle is contributing to the likely possibility that we're going to have some real problems as we go forward. So the future, as I see it, for this audience that we're speaking to, landscape architects, is to do exactly as you said, design water smart. Start thinking about implementing water into every landscape design that you do and make that really a component of your offering that's going to differentiate you, make you more of a regenerative, sustainable
Mm.
landscape architect. It is going to create more value to your clients. It's going to create a more competitive edge if that's something you need. But the most important thing is it is going to layer on that component of water that ensures that those designs that you worked so hard, those landscape designs that you worked so hard to conceptualize and implement last, and that your clients are happy and they will thank you at some point because when those water restrictions do happen, or even if they don't, they're, the thing that I've noticed is that we are, as a society, becoming so disconnected with reality. And the thing that brings us back is nature, pets, our kids. And
Mhm.
so as if you get your hands in the soil and you're planting things, man, and you watch that grow, whether you did it or you're the client who owns that property, you get to see that happen. And that's magical. And when you do that with water
Mhm.
and you capture and reuse and you're more efficient with water, you connect with that as well. It's something that just inherently makes us more connected to everything. So the clients will thank landscape architects for not just that water security, but just that connection and that they're able to feel like they're doing something beneficial in their community and maybe, serving as an example. And hopefully neighbors catch on and it becomes more of a bigger community act that protects and sustains our water supply for generations to come.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we do need to, you know, not just to, I mean, you mentioned differentiating your services and differentiating yourself, but it goes deeper to the educating people that our freshwater aquifers are depleting even when you see water all around you, and
Mhm.
that education, is where you start. And then, but, we can help you with that. We can, we can build your land to counter that and to help. And if we all do our part, it becomes very, very easy. If we wait for other people to do it, it could it could be too late by the time, I think it's taking that ownership and building for it today is what'll help us in the future. So
That's right. And sadly, a lot of water supply, electricity supply, look, those are businesses and it becomes political, water and energy. So decentralizing that to your property is the right thing to do so that you're actually doing the right thing for the environment and for future generations. So it's an opportunity to really do I'd say the more mature thing of saying, hey, we're not going to waste anymore. We're going to actually create sustainability. We're going to create value around here. And wow, what a great thing to teach your kids for them to see that happening, growing up on this property and interacting with all these systems and having awareness of the resources that they're using.
fantastic. Well, Paul, this has been so great. We've loved having you on the podcast, and I think there's a lot more to unpack here. Maybe we'll have to look at, I'd love to see like a case study of one of your projects, and what you've been able to suggest and the options. And I think that, a real concrete example of it in action. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll hopefully have Paul on to talk about this more. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was going to say in the meantime, if anyone wants to see case studies, we have a ton of them on our website at waterchampions.com. And there's actually a tab for case studies.
Fantastic.
And those have all those metrics I was talking about as well as the whole story. So there's a great chance
Perfect.
to learn about that in the meantime. But yeah, I would love to share some case studies. It's fun, really fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, I'll put the contact details for you, Paul, if that's okay, on our show notes, as well as the link to the case studies for those of you to dig in deeper. Thanks, Paul, so much. It was great having you on, and look forward to chatting more.
That was great. Thank you so much, Angelique. Great being here. Thanks again.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You too.